Hello friends, TECHMANPAT here. The other day, my mother-in-law asked me to see if there was anything wrong with her phone. Every time she dialed a number, a voice on the other hand from Telstra would tell her that on the 28th of October, her phone would not work. I looked at the device and it was a 4G device, not particularly old, an Android Samsung phone. And then the cogs started clicking. Hang on. We've seen this before. Australia's 3G network shutdown, which was initially planned for July 2024, was delayed due to concerns that millions of 4G and 5G devices cannot call emergency services without a 2G or 3G network. That's right, you heard that right. Both 4G and 5G devices may not be allowed to call emergency services. And allowed is actually an interesting word to use. I'm not mistaken. Allowed. I'll get to that in a moment. And despite this, Australia is still moving forward with the 3G shutdown. So, there may be a new law that requires telecommunication companies to stop providing services to devices that cannot be confirmed as fully supporting emergency call functionality. Basically saying, if your chosen telco cannot verify that you can call 000, they will block you. And good luck. Your phone is basically a brick. But why are 4G and even 5G devices having such a bad day? Well, let's get started with this week's Dirt Report right after this intro. It all comes down to greed, laziness, proprietary systems, and voice over LTE. So let's start with that technical last bit. Voice over long-term evolution, or voice over LTE or VoLTE, is a high-speed wireless communication standard for voice calls and SMS used by mobile phones and actually a whole lot of other systems, data terminals and whatnot. Now, VoLTE has up to 3 times more voice and data capacity than the older 3G UMTS and up to 6 times more than the 2G GSM. It uses less bandwidth overall because VoLTE packets headers are smaller than those of unoptimized VoIP and just LTE. Now, to be able to make VoLTE calls, the device, its firmware, and the mobile telephone provider on each end, as well as the inter-telco connectivity, must all implement the service in the area and be able to work together. There's a lot of moving parts, and VoLTE has been marketed as HD voice by some telcos, but this is a broader concept I'm not going to go into. So to make this VoLTE system work, telcos have to enable voice services on their LTE cellular network. These are called VoLTE profiles, and they contain the necessary information for each service provider to enable VoLTE on the customer's equipment, e.g. your mobile phone. Then on the device manufacturer's end, they have to update their physical device, your mobile phone, with all the telcos from all around the world with their specific profile, hence the proprietary. Every single profile, Telstra, Vodafone, Optus will have a different VoLTE profile that the manufacturer of your mobile device has to install and put on your phone so that when it gets shipped to our country, to Australia, it works. This puts the onus on the manufacturer to make sure their VoLTE profile matches that of what the telco expects. And if all goes to plan, the device connects to the telco network, the device operating system will then automatically connect and enable voice over LTE. However, not all devices that have been sold as VoLTE capable support making calls to emergency numbers over the 4G LTE with VoLTE, which means they fall back onto, you guessed it, the 3G network. And some telcos and manufacturers have disabled the ability for phones to call emergency services with VoLTE. So as soon as you dial out an emergency service, it doesn't even go through VoLTE. It goes straight to the 2G or 3G network. This means that even if you have a 4G or 5G device, your manufacturer may not even have provided the correct profile for your region and the actual telco that you're subscribed with, or even enabled VoLTE emergency calls on your device. Now, of course, this affects devices bought overseas disproportionately, but also local devices that out of laziness only have that VoLTE enabled on the 2G and 3G network are still being sold here. Furthermore, if you thought it would be as easy as checking on the VoLTE settings on your phone, you're in for a surprise. A mobile device can have working VoLTE calling and act as such on the network, but when the 3G goes off, you won't be able to make a successful call to an emergency number, even though you have a full connection. Now, this has been known for a while. Back in 2022 at the European Emergency Number Association conference, telecom expert Rudolf von der Berg made a presentation to the conference outlining serious compatibility issues with VoLTE and calling emergency systems. One of the major issues he raised is that many 4G LTE phones, both European and international, are completely unable to call emergency services without the presence of a 2G or 3G network. Now, depending on the signal strength and other factors, a device may default to 2G or 3G networks anyway. Furthermore, a 4G LTE device may say emergency calls only within the system settings or notification area, but that message does not prove the device can actually make emergency calls over 4G LTE. And additionally, a device may be configured for 4G emergency calls in a given region, but fail to connect when placing a 4G call in another country. And as you can imagine, in Europe, plenty of countries to travel through. And these devices will generally get stuck on calling and the call will never get through, even though a 2G or a 3G network is available. And as you may remember, back in March this year, the federal government announced that more than 740,000 4G VoLTE-enabled phones would no longer be able to call emergency service after the 3G network was switched off. Then in early April 2024, this number was increased to more than 1 million devices, and we certainly talked about this in a video. This caused some of our telcos to delay the switch. In fact, Telstra originally set the switch off to be around June 30th, 2024, and then they extended it to the 31st of August and early May 2024. Then on the 14th of August, Telstra and Optus further extended the 3G switch-off date to the 28th of October, which is very soon, while Vodafone completed the 3G switch-off in early January 2024. What's worse is that our telcos have no clue how many devices will be made obsolete with the flick of a switch. What makes things even worse is that there are devices on sale right now at your local shop that will be basically a brick on the 28th of October. Moreover, one telco SIM, which may be working right now, but if you swap it, it may not, because again, that device may not have the VoLTE profile loaded for the new telco that you switch over. Be careful of the telcos that are your budget ones, your smaller ones. And for those who care about the environment, this converts into a lot of e-waste and potentially people having to buy a new device to replace something that could be months old when they bought it. Even iPhone 12s, if you bought them from the USA, would be trash here in Australia. And here's the best part, which may not be the best part for everyone. According to the latest Australian Communication and Media Authority Emergency Call Service Determination Direction legislative update, starting November the 1st, 2024, telcos will be required to block devices that they believe cannot call 000, but may in fact work with SMS and data just fine. This is due to the update of the Emergency Call Services Determination, which is right here, the subsection 6-2, which directs ACMA to include requirements for providers to identify mobile phones unable to access 000, notify the user, provide assistance if necessary to access an alternative mobile phone, and cease providing services to the affected device. Providers will also be required to not provide service to a prospective customer seeking service with an affected mobile phone. This requirement makes clear the responsibility providers have to ensure mobile networks provides access to emergency call services. And the amendment will be commenced in full by the 1st of November. And let's be clear, the thing that stops working is your ability to call emergency services during an emergency, and that could lead to loss of life, which is quite important. So I get why a telco cannot provide you services where you think you can call because you've got SMS and phone services to call other people, but you cannot call emergency services. So if you are going out and about, you probably won't take a phone that doesn't work with you. So I guess thumbs up for that. And by the way, that SMS check where you text 3 to 3498, well, it turns out that's not even 100% accurate either. So only a month left before D-Day, and it begs the question, whose responsibility is it to look into this? Well, as we know, MP Michelle Rowland has stepped up, but is it enough? I don't know. Now, let's finish off with the greed part. Telcos have invested millions of dollars into 5G infrastructure, which means why bother paying for 3G when you need to get a return on your 5G investment? Not only that, you also get to sell more devices to your customer base because you've turned off 3G and they all need a new one. That is literally the definition of planned obsolescence. What's interesting is Australia is one of the first countries in doing so, and all eyes are on us on how we will fare. What can you do? Well, you can contact your local MP or Michelle Rowland and let your thoughts be heard. You can share this video, of course, and give it a like so others may see it. And hopefully we might keep 3G kicking around until VoLTE is put to bed. Let me know your thoughts below. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you all in another one. Bye.